Welcome to our online classroom at Kuya Prof TV with Professor Aldrin Sacristan. Our lesson today is about institutions and kinds of laws. Objectives. After studying this lesson, you should be able to identify two types of institutions. Explain how institutions reduce uncertainty. Identify the two core propositions underpinning an institution-based view of global business. List the differences between democracy and totalitarianism. List the differences among civil law, common law, and theocratic law. Articulate the importance of property rights and intellectual property rights. List the differences among market economy, command economy, and mixed economy. Explain why it is important to understand the different institutions when doing business abroad. You might have heard the statement before that the world keeps getting smaller. Indeed, because of international trade agreements, faster and more efficient shipping and the pervasiveness of the internet across the globe are all contributing toward a global economy, and global business is at the center of it all, and that is the reason why as if the world is getting smaller. As observed, e-commerce is always associated with the searching for new business opportunities in different and unexplored parts of the world. In Lesson 1, you learned about the concepts of international business and global business as well as the size of the global economy and its broad trends. We will connect these concepts to politics, laws, and economics in global business, which will be tackled in more detail in this lesson. Understanding institutions. A popular metaphor for institutions is the rules of the game, but what exactly are institutions? Douglas North, a Nobel laureate in economics, more formally defines institutions as the humanly devised constraints that structure human interaction. An institutional framework is made up of both the formal and informal institutions. Richard Scott, a leading sociologist, identifies three pillars that support these institutions: regulatory, normative, and cognitive. Formal institutions include laws, regulations, and rules. Their primary supportive pillar, the regulatory pillar, is the coercive power of governments. The normative pillar refers to how the values, beliefs, and actions collectively known as norms of other relevant players influence the behavior of focal individuals and firms. The cognitive pillar is the second support for informal institutions. It refers to the internalized, or taken for granted, values and beliefs that guide individual and firm behavior. What do institutions do? While institutions do many things, their key role is to reduce uncertainty. Specifically, institutions influence the decision-making process of both individuals and firms by signaling what conduct is legitimate and acceptable and what is not. Basically, institutions constrain the range of acceptable actions. Why is it so important to reduce uncertainty? Because uncertainty can be potentially devastating. Political uncertainty such as an uprising may render long-range planning obsolete. Economic uncertainty such as failure to carry out transactions as spelled out in contracts may result in economic losses. An institution-based view of global business. An institution-based view of global business focuses on the dynamic interaction between institutions and firms and considers firm behavior as the outcome of such an interaction. Specifically, firm behavior is often a reflection of the formal and informal constraints of a particular institutional framework. In short, institutions matter. Political systems. A political system refers to the rules of the game on how a country is governed politically. At the broadest level, there are two primary political systems: democracy and totalitarianism. This section first outlines these two systems and then discusses their ramifications for political risk. Democracy. Democracy is a political system in which citizens elect representatives to govern the country on their behalf. Usually, the political party with the majority of votes wins and forms a government. Democracy was pioneered by the Athenians in ancient Greece. In today's world, Great Britain has the longest experience of running a democracy, and India has the largest democracy, by population. Totalitarianism. On the opposite end of the political spectrum from democracy is totalitarianism, also known as dictatorship, which is defined as a political system in which one person or party exercises absolute political control over the population. Political risk. While the degree of hostility toward business varies among different types of totalitarianism, some can be more pro-business than others. Totalitarianism in general is not as good for business as democracy. Totalitarian countries often experience wars, riots, protests, chaos, and breakdowns. As a result, these countries often suffer from a high level of political risk, which is a risk associated with political changes that may negatively impact domestic and foreign firms. Legal systems. A legal system refers to the rules of the game on how a country's laws are enacted and enforced. By specifying the do's and don'ts, a legal system reduces transaction costs by minimizing uncertainty and combating opportunism. This section first introduces three different legal traditions and then discusses crucial issues associated with property rights and intellectual property. Civil law, common law, and theocratic law. Laws in different countries typically are not enacted from scratch but are often transplanted voluntarily or otherwise from three legal traditions, or legal families: civil law, common law, and theocratic law. Each is introduced here. Civil law was derived from Roman law and strengthened by Napoleon's France. It is the oldest, the most influential, and the most widely distributed around the world. It uses comprehensive statutes and codes as a primary means to form legal judgments. Over 80 countries practice civil law. Common law, which is English in origin, is shaped by precedents and traditions from previous judicial decisions. Common law has spread to all English-speaking countries, most of which were at one time British colonies. Relative to civil law, common law has more flexibility because judges have to resolve specific disputes based on their interpretation of the law, and such interpretation may give new meaning to the law, which will in turn shape future cases. The third legal family is theocratic law, a legal system based on religious teachings. Examples include Jewish and Islamic laws. Although Jewish law is followed by some elements of the Israeli population, it is not formally embraced by the Israeli government. Islamic law is the only surviving example of a theocratic legal system that is formally practiced by some governments, including those in Iran and Saudi Arabia. Property rights. One fundamental economic function that a legal system serves is to protect property rights, which are the legal rights to use an economic property, resource, and to derive income and benefits from it. A legal system fills this economic role whether it is civil, common, or theocratic. Examples of property include homes, offices, and factories. Ideas are also property, but these will be discussed separately in the next section. Intellectual property rights. While the term property traditionally refers to tangible pieces of property such as land, intellectual property specifically refers to intangible property that is the result of intellectual activity, such as the content of books, videos, and websites. Intellectual property rights or IPR are legal rights associated with the ownership of intellectual property. IPR primarily includes rights associated with patents, copyrights, and trademarks. Patents are legal rights awarded by government authorities to inventors of new products or processes. The inventors are given exclusive, monopoly, rights to derive income from such inventions through activities such as manufacturing, licensing, or selling. Copyrights are the exclusive legal rights of authors and publishers to publish and disseminate their work. Trademarks are the exclusive legal rights of firms to use specific names, brands, and designs to differentiate their products from others. Market, command, and mixed economies. An economic system refers to the rules of the game on how a country is governed economically. A pure market economy is characterized by the invisible hand of market forces by Adam Smith in The Wealth of Nations. The government takes a laissez-faire, hands-off, approach. Theoretically, all factors of production should thus be privately owned. The government performs only functions the private sector cannot perform, such as providing roads and defense. A pure command economy is defined by a government taking, in the words of Lenin, the commanding height in the economy. Theoretically, all factors of production should be state-owned and state-controlled, and all supply, demand, and pricing are planned by the government. During the heydays of communism, the former Soviet Union and China approached such an ideal. A mixed economy as defined has components of both a market economy and a command economy. It relates to the relative delivery of market forces as against to the command forces. In reality, no nation has ever totally grasped Adam Smith's perfect laissez-faire approach. Management savvy. Focusing on formal institutions, this chapter has sketched the contours of an institution-based view of global business. How does the institution-based view help us answer our fundamental question of utmost concern to managers around the globe? In a nutshell, this chapter suggests that firm performance is determined, at least in part, by the institutional frameworks governing firm behavior. It is the growth of the firm that, in the aggregate, leads to the growth of the economy. We will end our discussion of institutions and kinds of laws here. Thank you very much for watching.